Of the role of flying monkeys. And last time we talked about point number 4, but I want to go over point number 4 again and then move on to point number 5. And then next week we will move on to point number 6. But I want to reiterate, since it's been a little while that we've been over this teaching. And so point number 4 that we discussed was murder for hire. That's the 4th role that a flying monkey plays. Not every flying monkey, but there are some flying monkeys that play the role of murder for hire. And as we talked about before, those individuals may or may not get paid. Like the flunky position, you're just filling a role that the narcissist himself wants to get off the hook for, and or doesn't care about what happens to himself in the end. He'll go down with you in a ball of flames, right? Just like with the case of Jezebel and Ahab, with the vineyard of Naboth. Ahab felt entitled to, as a vulnerable narcissist, felt entitled to Naboth's vineyard. And he went about sulking because he thought that once he told Naboth, hey, I'll pay you for it, or I'll give you a vineyard, we can trade, or you can have something comparable. And Naboth is like, no, we ain't going there. He wasn't nasty, but he basically told him that he couldn't do that. That answer did not please Ahab. He left from there sulking and went and didn't want to eat, turned his face to the wall like a little kid. And Jezebel is basically saying, like, I'm paraphrasing, what's wrong with you? So when somebody goes, what's wrong with you? You must be looking a certain kind of way if somebody asks you what's wrong with you, right? And so that's when he goes on to explain to Jezebel he wants this vineyard and he can't have it. And then she says to him, well, ain't you the king? And it's like, okay, you the king, you can get and do whatever it is you want to do, so just go ahead and take it. In other words, right, like you entitled to it. And Jezebel, being who she is, a grandiose and malignant narcissist, right, one who likes to go after God's people, after the prophets, and kill them, right, one who has this takeover spirit, right? The spirit that's led by power and control. What does she tell him? Cheer up. Hey, I'll go get it for you. That's basically what she said, right? Because in verse, when you look in the scripture, the conversation between Naboth and Ahab, it said, but Naboth said to Ahab, as the Lord is my witness, I would never give my ancestors' inheritance to you. So he made it clear, like, God is not even for this. He's like, God is my witness, right? When you say God be my witness, you are basically saying, like, you got my word on it, right? Because I'm like, the Lord is on this. He's like, basically we ain't doing it, right? And so Jezebel said to Ahab further down, exercise your royal power over Israel. Get up, eat some food, and be happy, for I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, right? And it says in verse 8, so she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal. She sent the letters to the elders and the nobles who lived with Naboth in his city. In the letters she wrote, proclaim a fast and seat Naboth at the head of the people. So you already going to go and do something you're not supposed to do. You already falsifying documents. But then you go and have what I call as gaslighting by actions. You proclaim a fast as if what you are about to do has been ordained, right, and condoned by God. She said, then seek 2 wicked men opposite him and have them testify against him, saying, you have cursed God and the king, then take him out and stone him to death. So you've got to be a person of very much so wicked character if you can go and write some letters and tell them to find 2 wicked men to testify that Naboth is blaspheming God. And then to tell them to then do what? To go ahead and take them out and stone them, and for people to go along with it. But remember now, they're thinking that King Ahab wrote this. And even so, with the king, whatever he says goes. It's like everybody had to follow through on his instructions anyway. But even so, even if it was Ahab, in order for people to just go along, yes, he's the king, they had no other choice but to follow his orders. But you got to be something if you go out and find 2 wicked men. And so for you to, as a person, to go along with it, you've got to have something, like they say, got to be wicked men. You got to have something in your character as well, right? For some reason, it seems like narcissistic people, they kind of buddy with other narcissistic people, but then it's like this love and hate relationship with them, right? They love each other, but at the same time, they hate each other. And then at the same time, they reinforce each other's brokenness and narcissism of the different varieties on the spectrum. And then at the same time, they exploit each other because they understand what each other needs and wants, and the supply that person is desiring. So they play on that, right? And don't ever make a comment in regards to what one narcissistic person says about another narcissistic person, because you guaranteed, I promise you, God be my witness, as Naboth said, they will take the information you said and you would think nothing of it, just an innocent comment, and they will go back and report that to the narcissistic individual that they are quote unquote hating at that moment. And all of a sudden what they said became what you said. So you got to be very careful in how you have a conversation with these type of individuals. But just going back to the story, you've got to be a certain type of individual. Like they said, find 2 wicked men in order to go and lie and say somebody blasphemed God, and you know that it's going to lead to them being stoned to death. And that's why specifically she put that in there, because not anybody just going to go and agree to do that. Whether the king said it or not, to do that in good conscience, not anybody just going to do that. It's got to be a person that's wicked. So they had to go out and find 2 wicked men that were what? Their heart was just that tainted enough where they would go and do something like that without even having a conscience about doing, not even thinking twice, right? And it said, then they sent word, they took him out of the city, stoned him to death with stones. And then they sent word to Jezebel, Naboth has been stoned to death. When Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned to death, she said to Ahab, get up, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, who refused to give it to you for silver, since Naboth isn't alive but dead. So it's just like with hers, it's like, okay, just another thing I done checked off my to-do list. As if we cleaning around the house, right? Women know they have laundry, right? You fixing the bed, you washing the linen, right? You doing the laundry, you clean the kitchen, you clean the bathroom. She can just check with another thing off of her malignant narcissist and / grandiose narcissistic list, right? And it said when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, he got up to go to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. Right? He just went right along with it. Didn't ask about what she did, anything, right? But see, that's what happens when you deal with someone that is a grandiose / malignant narcissist. They would just up and do stuff. Ahab was the vulnerable narcissist. They act passively aggressively, and even when they have power, they need somebody to egg them on to do what it is that they really want to do, but they don't have courage to do. They need that grandiose individual, right? They need that person with the Jezebel spirit to egg them on to do what it is they don't have the courage to do, right? Which is something evil or malicious anyway, right? And the way that we know that Jezebel was a malignant narcissist, because in scripture, when Obadiah met up with Elijah on the road, and Elijah asked Obadiah about letting Ahab know about meeting up with him, Obadiah got scared. He reminded Elijah, like, hey, I can't be getting involved in this. Like, I'm going to be next. And in scripture, in 1 Kings 18, it says, while Obadiah was walking along the road, Elijah suddenly met him. When Obadiah recognized him, he fell face down and said, is it you, my Lord Elijah? It is I, he replied. Go tell your Lord Elijah is here. But Obadiah said, what sin have I committed that you're handing your servant over to Ahab to put me to death? As the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my Lord has not sent someone to search for you. When they said he's not here, he made that kingdom or nation swear they had not found you. Now you say, go tell your Lord Elijah's here. But when I leave you, the Spirit of the Lord may carry you off to some place I don't know. Then when I go report to Ahab and he doesn't find you, he will kill me. But I, your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth. Wasn't it reported to my Lord? He's like, don't you know? Wasn't it reported to my Lord, right? Is what he says. That what I did when Jezebel slaughtered the Lord's prophets, I hid 100 of the prophets of the Lord, 50 men to a cave, and I provided them with food and water. Now you say, go tell your Lord Elijah's here. He will kill me. He's like, hey, I hit these prophets, right? 50 in one cave, 50 in another. While Jezebel went around slaughtering all these prophets of God. And now you want me to get involved in this mess. And it says, then Elijah said, as the Lord of armies live, in whose presence I stand today, I will present myself to Ahab. So he's basically letting Obadiah know it's okay. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to make sure I stay around so you don't get murdered as well, right? Jezebel was just malicious, right? And she egged Ahab on in his power and influence, right? Because the Jezebel spirit doesn't have the power and influence to do things that he or she wants to do on their own. They use people, other people who have the power and influence to what? To run their agenda, right? And so along with having this, the flying monkey playing the role of murder for hire, sometimes they feel that they want to do it just because they felt that justice didn't prevail. And so they want to take it in their own hands. And that's what Absalom did after his sister Tamar had been raped by her half-brother Amnon, right? And in scripture, in 2 Samuel 13:20 through 39, it says, her brother Absalom said to her, has your brother Amnon been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart. So Tamar lived as a desolate woman in the house of her brother Absalom. But think about this. He says to be quiet, my sister. You have just been raped, right? You've just been taken advantage of. You've just been assaulted, and you want them to be quiet. It's just like back in the day, you know, we don't talk about, you know, what goes on in this house stays in this house, that type of thing, right? He's telling her to be quiet. The last thing she needs to do is to be quiet. She needs to be to get that trauma up and out of her body, right? All that trauma and grief and just the devastation and destruction of her soul, it needs to come out of her mouth. And it says when King David heard about all these things, he was furious. Absalom didn't say anything to Amnon, either good or bad, because he hated Amnon since he disgraced his sister Tamar. And then it says 2 years later, Absalom's sheep shearers were at Baal Hazor near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. Then he went to the king and said, your servant has just hired sheep shearers. Will the king and his servants please come with your servant? The king replied to Absalom, no, my son, we should not all go, or we should be a burden to you. Although Absalom urged him, he wasn't willing to go, though he did bless him. So David didn't want to go, but he gave his blessings toward the sheep shearing party, but he's just basically like, no, I'm not going. And then it's like, then it says in verse 26, if not, Absalom said, please let my brother Amnon go with us. The king asked him, why should he go with you? But Absalom urged him, so he sent Amnon and all the king's sons. Look at how passive David is. He knew Amnon had raped his daughter Tamar. He knew Absalom was mad. He knew he himself was mad. And he didn't stop to further investigate. He just sends Amnon over there to Absalom's sheep shearing party. And you know something was going on if he said, why should he go with you? Like, why you want him, of all people, right? Both of them mad. Neither one of them addressed the issue. No family meeting was held. David and his passivity, right? And then Absalom with his spirit of narcissism, he didn't say anything, right? But he was plotting revenge. And then it says, so he sent Amnon and all the king's sons. So David went on to send them. And then verse 28 says, now Absalom commanded his young men, watch Amnon until he's in a good mood from the wine. And when I order you to strike Amnon, then kill him. Don't be afraid. Am I not the one who has commanded you? Be strong and valiant. So Absalom's young men did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded. Then all of the rest of the king's sons got up and each fled on his mule. So basically, when he said, don't be afraid, am I not the one who has commanded you? That reminds me of Joshua 1:9, right? So he basically took the place of God. When God told Joshua, right, haven't I commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Who in the world did Absalom think he was, right? It's like, who do you think you are, giving a verse that's similar, speech coming out of your mouth that's similar to the verse that God gave Joshua in order to what? go ahead and basically promote this buffoonery / foolishness that you've got going on to kill somebody, you got your servants. Those were the flying monkeys. Absalom's servants were the flying monkeys who went on and did what? Who went on and killed his half-brother Amnon, right? And you would think, okay, this was because of the fact that David didn't do anything. Nobody else didn't do anything. Justice had to prevail for Tamar, right? On the surface, that's what it looks like. And he was doing it for Tamar, but there was another reason, right? Absalom was a narcissist, a communal narcissist, right? And communal narcissists love to get all of the accolades from hundreds of people at once. They're not just going to go for having a position where they're not seen. They're going to go for a position where everybody see them, so everybody can be, oh, how wonderful you are. You just so this and that, which is why he stood at the city gates where the king normally is, knowing all the people were going to come there. And he wooed them and kissed their hand and hugged and all of that. And he won the hearts of the people over, right? So Absalom, what he did was had all of this stuff planned out. But the thing about it is he knew that if he got rid of Amnon anyway, right? This thing that happened with Tamar only gave him more impetus to do what he wanted to do anyway. It was a catalyst for it. Because really, what he wanted to do is get rid of anybody that was going to get in the way of him possibly being on the kingdom, the kingship, having it after his dad. So he was going to get rid of anybody in the way. Like I said, this just happened to be the opportunity that presented itself, and it's like, hey, I'll take it. This is just one thing I can use as an excuse. Because some things, there's some things that's been in our hearts for the longest. We haven't had courage to do. Then all of a sudden something will happen, and then you'll use whatever happened as an excuse for pulling out of something when you knew from the get-go, as they would say back in the day. You knew from the get-go you no longer wanted to participate in it, but you used the latest thing to say that that's why you were pulling out, right? When you wanted to release yourself from that group a long time ago. You wanted to release yourself from that job a long time ago. You wanted to release yourself from that marriage a long time ago, from that friendship a long time ago, from that ministry, from that church. But you used this latest thing as an excuse, right? You didn't get to the root of the issue. You used it as an excuse just to say, I'm peacing out, right? And so that's what Absalom did. He used Tamar's rape as an opportunity to go ahead and have Amnon killed when he wanted to have him killed anyway, because what? The kingship was at stake. And communal narcissists, right? Anybody that's going to seem like they're going to get in the way, they will sabotage that situation in the background. They will do a murder for hire, right? Look at Joab. Joab did it. Joab also was a communal narcissist. He liked all the accolades from all of the people, right? He was David's right-hand man. And even though he gave David good advice at times, he was also an opportunist, right? Even when he had the lady to go to David, it still was all about him and him saying, oh, I still got favor with David. At the end of the day, narcissistic individuals are only looking out for what? For the person they see in the mirror, right? And so when Absalom did this, he had them killed. This was a murder for hire, and this was through his flying monkeys. But he still was charged for murder. They were not charged. He was in charge because he gave the command. These were his men, right? He was emboldened by, Amnon was emboldened by a Jezebel spirit of control, right? But Amnon worked as more of, he was emboldened by the Jezebel spirit, but the Jezebel spirit was in Jonadab, his cousin, who encouraged him to rape Tamar, right? Amnon had more of a passive aggressive spirit. He went around pouting, just like King Ahab. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't have her, and looking sick and all that, to the point of Jonadab going, that's like Jezebel did. What's wrong with you? And that's when he told him. And then Jonadab come up with this whole plan of what it was that he could do in order to be able to get to have his sister Tamar. So Jonadab had to be a mess, right? And I thought we were going to go further than this, but we got a lot in just within, a lot was packed into just this lesson here. And I wanted to be able to sit with you to really think about and digest being on hire as a flying monkey for murder just how deep it can go when you are in a relationship with a person that's a narcissist, and you give yourself over to this person in loyalty faith, right? Not realizing that this pledge of loyalty, this covenant, so to speak, can literally end up being the death of you. And one last comment I wanted to make about being the role of the flying monkey being one of murder for hire. When you think about Jonadab, right? When after Absalom had Amnon killed, right, through his servants, and everybody's fleeing on their donkeys, and then they get over there to where David was, and they tell David that all of his sons had been killed. And David, of course, tear his clothes off, weeping, and literally, and his servants are doing the same thing. And then Jonadab, who's standing right there, of course, Jonadab's right there for everything, right? That's how you know the instigators. They right there for everything. They see everything. Oh no, my Lord, don't get all upset. The only person that's been killed is Amnon. Now remember this. Remember now. Think about this. Jonadab egged Amnon on to assault his sister. So how in the world did Jonadab know that Absalom was going to kill Amnon? He had to have been playing both sides. He had to be egging both of them on. Just like he egged on Amnon to assault Tamar, he had to actually also, when you read between the lines, how did he know that Absalom was going to kill Amnon? How did he know he was going to have that done? He tells David, he's been planning this since the day of the rape. But how did he know that? This is an individual. This is a type of individual who loves to live through other people. This type of individual may or may not be narcissistic, right? Jonadab was an instigator. He enabled two narcissistic individuals at one time, right? He egged them on. He lived through them. Some people like to just sit back, especially narcissistic people, and they will tell you what it is that you should do, but they would never do it. And they would think awful of other people who do it, but they sit back and they encourage other people to do things just to see how, if the person is going to do it or not, if they're going to take their advice, and then they sit back and talk about you in their own head and with other people. So you got to be careful of people who walk around knowing all the information about everybody. A lot of times those are the instigators. And I'm going to leave this Bible study right here at this point. And next week we're going to pick up on point number, we're going to pick up on point number 5 as far as the role of the flying monkeys. Again, I'm Katina Horton, the Love and Freedom Toxic Relationship Recovery Coach. Be blessed. Until next time.